Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. In Mufti Menk's book, Motivational Moments, Volume 1, there's a great quote here that I wanted to share with you. We feel disappointed because we expect too much from others. Don't. People change. Don't expect them to stay the same. Trust the Almighty's plans. Now, something notable here. Expecting too much. People change. Now, with my grandma, for example, she's never going to change to be the loving, nurturing, caring, close person. And as time goes on, she becomes more distant. And now she has onset dementia, so she's like forgetting me even more. If you were to ask her what's the name of my children, she probably couldn't tell you. She didn't call once during my pregnancy with my most recent baby. I always have to call, and it's quite lonely. So I expect the bare minimum: communication. But I have to acknowledge who she is, and then realize that thinking that she would care enough to call is expecting too much because of who she is. You see, this really made me think a lot, because we can want someone to be a certain way, and they're never gonna be that way because they're set in their ways. And our complaining, our lamenting isn't gonna change them. I had written a text to my dad's mom, my grandma on that side, and told her how her neglect and also how her non-involvement in my life hurt me and stuff, and she just wrote back and said, "Don't send me nasty messages." I didn't see it as really nasty, but she just never, she only has spoken to me maybe 10 times in my life, maybe even less than that. I don't even remember seeing her in person. And it's like, she literally does not care. And for so many years, I was the only grandchild she had. That is something dark to me. So I can't expect her, when I look at my children, and expect her to suddenly pop up and want to be an involved great grandma, because she would be technically a great grandma. And then my mom, for example, when I was growing up, or I just had one kid, would be like, "Oh, I'm sorry for the way you were treated, blah 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 blah. Grandparents didn't do this, they didn't do that." And yet my mom is barely involved with her grandchildren. And you'll message her. She doesn't, for a long time, she doesn't have a job. Sometimes she gets temp jobs. In Utah, you're able to go to these places and they find you a temp job. And that doesn't impact your welfare, something like that. And she'll do those jobs, but they don't prevent her. They're not time consuming, really. And she still has so much time on her hands. When she didn't have a job, she's just sitting and watching TV. And I noticed when she would call me, she would always say, "I'm bored, what are you doing?" And then I realized, you're only calling me because you're bored, not because you genuinely care about what I'm doing, how I am. And her bipolar medication kind of lobotomizes her as well, so the conversations are not really engaging, and she just repeats herself a lot about how she's sad and she's bored. And I'll tell her, "You should read, you should do hobbies, you should go on a walk, you should go to the gym, do something," and it's like she won't do it and then complains, and it's just the same circle over and over. So I found it deeply troubling and ironic and hypocritical that she was being a neglectful grandparent herself. So I look at my family and I'm like, I can't expect anything from them. There's a reason why I moved away and I haven't gone back to visit them in almost 13 years. And I'm just gonna keep them away, and they won't be able to disappoint my children, who don't even know their faces and who couldn't pick out their name from a crowd. And if you were to ask them what's so-and-so's name, they wouldn't even be able to tell you. They'd be like, what? They could pass by the street of them and not even know who they are. And so they can't be hurt by what they don't know, because being rejected, knowing that you exist and that there's family members who don't care about you, can cause you pain. And so out of sight, out of mind is what I keep with them. And so my expectations for them are very minimal. My dad sometimes still even spells my name wrong, gets my age wrong, and he's constantly high on weed, and you're like, I can't expect really anything. And I had texted him with my most recent pregnancy how many months I was later on, because I almost wasn't even going to tell him or involve him in the process at all. Then later when my son was born and I talked about it, he was like, you're pregnant? You had a baby? And so he was so high and so not caring, so uninvolved, that he forgot our past conversations. And so I realized I shouldn't even expect him to remember what the hell I'm talking about. So that's raw. And having accurate expectations of people saves a lot of pain, and also helps you to disassociate and de-bond, as in like, okay, if that person, their funeral's tomorrow, I don't care, I'm not going. I'm not obligated, and as a Muslim, we can't go to certain Christians' funerals. Long story, I saw the video Hassim Al-Hakim did on that, and then in the fiqh book, The Concise Presentation of Fiqh, had a thing on funerals. But point is, if you were to put that aside, I wouldn't even feel the compulsion to go, because I don't have the bond there. Because if you rejected me while you were alive, you ejected me from your life, you rejected me, you passed by me, you didn't care, now you expect me to pay for a hotel, contribute to the funeral, and contribute more to your funeral than what you contributed to me in my life, and using my time more than you used your time. I don't think so. And the energy at a funeral should be only for those who loved the person, I'd argue. If you didn't care about that person. It's different when Muslims see a funeral procession and they want to join and follow the believer to be buried. That's quite different than somebody who they were not loving towards you, and you have a bit of animosity there, and then you're going to go to the funeral. I feel like it ruins the vibe. You're going to see people crying, people in pain. Those people will be scanning the audience. They're going to want to see reassurance and be around people who share their pain. They don't want to be sitting next to somebody who is like brooding and brimming with like resentment. You're kind of ruining it for them. And if you don't want to be there, you shouldn't be there, because you'll show, even if you try to hide it, how much you don't want to be there. So for me, I just see it as I wouldn't really want to be there. And so they shouldn't expect certain things from me, and I shouldn't expect certain things from them. And when you actually sit down and look at that honestly, you actually have less disappointment. And sometimes you gotta just accept things the way they are, and that hope can hurt you. When you hope too high, you're setting the bar so high that you're going to be disappointed. Like, for example, one of my brothers, he said he was going to buy a hat from my daughter, who she makes these little beanies. And I told my eldest, don't believe him. He's probably lying. Don't give your hopes up. Don't think about how once he buys your little hat, how you're going to go buy a little treat or something from the market or something. No, don't. Don't believe it. Believe it when you see it. And what do you know? He never bought anything, and I haven't even spoken to him in a long time. Now, it's been a long time. I think almost a year at least. Not even a text. So it hurt to tell her that, but I wasn't going to let her go through what I went through as a kid, where people make promises to you and then they don't keep it. Because children get fed high expectations and then they're systematically let down by people, and no one warns them. My mom used to call me when I used to live with my grandparents. I didn't even know her face at that time. And she would say, we're going to ride horses. We're going to have horses. And she would say, yeah, honey, we'll do whatever you want. And then I was so excited. And then I can see why my grandma would not answer because back in those days we had caller ID, the old-fashioned phones. Why my grandma tried her best to keep my mom out of my life, because my mom, in her addiction, this is another terrible thing about addicts, they make promises, they let you down, they're only disappointments, and then they hurt you. And you learn to have less trust for people. And so I wasn't going to let that cycle keep happening. So I, as a kid, was told all these things, expectations, and then people let you down and you're like, oh, that's brutal. Absolutely brutal. And so, with my children, I'm dropping knowledge, even if it may come off as like, are they the right age for that? No. People can talk. It's action that you need to look at. Okay? I will do. You don't know. Inshallah. You don't know. Okay? But people should be more cautious about also what they're getting children to expect. That's another thing. And so, how do we protect ourselves from disappointment? Is by having accurate expectations, and this also requires you to measure something accurately. And that takes patience and diligence and true analysis and honesty. You know? Because some people were like, I want my kid to do this, this, and that. Go to the moon. But your kid is not on that level yet, and you're over-assessing their ability based on the dream you want. And, working, what do you expect from someone, and working within what is possible, and trusting in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is important. Because the future really is unknown. But we can look at certain patterns and present circumstances in order to see what to expect. And it's great when someone exceeds your expectations. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's much better than, I expected this, and this. And then they let you down so badly that it stays there with you like a heavy stone that you gotta carry around. Terrible. Let me know what you think. Maybe you have your own experience with this. I'll be very curious to see. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and join the blog.